Welcome to the Tailgate Podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about the rest of our preseason projections for the other Power 5 conferences, and we're also going to be talking about our top coaching hires for 2023, as well as what coaches we think are going to be on the hot seat, and some other news from around the country. Alrighty. Well, welcome back, guys.
Yeah.
It's week 2, episode 2. It's great.
Bust out the Ohio State shirt.
You did. You busted out the Ohio State shirt. Way to go.
Here we go.
I'm gonna bring out my UT shirt next week. No, Texas, not Texas. I knew you were going there.
Too slow, Dennis.
Too slow.
Yeah, some people say that about UT as well.
No, they don't. Not anymore. They may have under Butch Jones.
Not after Jalen Hyatt being the fastest guy in the NFL.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Now, I think we have to see what he's going to do when he puts on pads. I haven't heard whether or not that was just without pads or with pads.
Either
and
way,
downhill with wind going against with them, and you never know.
Fair enough. Well, I know we got to get into our projections, but before we do, I do want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor tonight, which again is Explore Tours. Explore Tours is a local tour company in Middle Tennessee, and they provide unique tour experiences, educational experiences, and just all-around adventure and fun. So if you're in the Middle Tennessee area and you want to go on a tour or want to learn more about Nashville, where you live or where you're visiting, just check it out at exploretours.com. Thanks. All right, so we're going to hit into some Big 12 projections because we're
he knows his numbers. Look at him.
I do know my numbers. It's great. And I think you were saying earlier, Luke, that you had a lot of you went and decided to go ahead and rank everything too, which is great.
Yeah, I went ahead and did my ranking, so I guess we can just I'll start at the top.
Sounds good.
Who I've got number 1?
Yeah.
You guys agree, disagree? If you watched the first episode of our podcast, you'd know that I'm probably higher on this team than a lot of people are, and that's Texas.
Yep.
So I've got
UT.
Texas at 1. They have 85% of their offensive production and 63% of their defensive production coming back. There's big expectations for them, especially with both of their quarterbacks that they've got. All 5 of their offensive linemen are coming back, but they do have to replace running back Bijan Robinson, and then obviously the quarterback battle. We got to see what's happening with them.
True.
So thoughts on Texas, guys?
I have them best case going 10-2. I think they still have enough competition in the Big 12 where they could have some stumbles. I do think that they have the potential to beat Bama at Bama, but that's a tough road game, and Bama will be out for a vengeance because they were kind of snubbed last year, at least in their eyes they were snubbed last year. So I think Texas going 10-2 is their best scenario. I heard the other day that it is arguable that they have probably the second best wide receiver room in college football right now, second to Ohio State. I would make the argument that the other UT has a better wide receiver room, but ours are not as seasoned or as veteran as Texas are. So I can see why people would say that. So, but that's what I would say. What do you got?
No, I mean, I agree. I think actually, personally, I think UT is actually go 11-1, best case scenario. But I feel like the possible scenario is kind of going 10-2, kind of like you were saying, just because I feel like Alabama's going to definitely be a true test, and obviously Oklahoma's going to definitely be a competition there. But I have Texas Tech actually something that could provide just a general trouble into that entire division.
Fair enough.
All right, great. So going into 2, and by the way, I'm thankful that you did say that Ohio State is the best wide receiver.
You're welcome.
I mean, they got to be
You're welcome.
something, right?
Far and away. So number 2.
I can't say far and away. I'd say they're definitely the most well-rounded, and they have they have the best depth and the most consistent speed.
They have to be able to claim something nationally. Obviously, it's not going to be a championship, so you could do the receiver.
The reason I say far and away, I still feel like there's other teams that are in close competition. I'm not saying better.
Preseason, looking at it, like you've said, the talent is proven at Ohio State.
I agree.
Talent in other places. I think Tennessee has the potential to have a great wide receiver room, but they aren't a season, which is why I would say far and away.
Well, fair enough.
So, but
It's
anyway,
just an adjective I don't know if I'd use.
so we're talking SEC
Yeah.
and Big Ten. Let's get
Yeah.
back to Big 12.
Let's get back to Big 12.
So number 2, I actually have Kansas State.
Okay.
They've got 73% of their returning production on offense and 52% of their defensive production coming back.
Okay.
They do have to replace a great running back. It was Deuce Vaughn, and then their secondary was kind of decimated as well. But they have one of the best offensive lines in the country, and their quarterback, Will Howard, is potentially a star. I mean,
Yeah,
he's got to prove himself, but he's looking really good.
Yeah, I agree. I put them as like their best case scenario for them would be a 9-3. So 9-3, 10-2 is not far off from a projection that they could potentially have, and I could easily see them vying for that top spot in the Big 12 again.
Yeah, actually having the same way. 10-2, 9-3 is going to be a more realistic option, honestly.
Cool. So 3, I've got Oklahoma coming in at 3.
Okay.
Again, production-wise, 62% of their offensive production, 63% of their defensive, and then they've actually got 13 transfers coming in.
That's true. Yeah.
They had a very disappointing season last year, 6-7. Venables is under some pressure, which we may get to a little bit later, because they were giving up, I think it was 30 points a game, and they were 9th in the Big 12 against the run. But I think that this year they're going to start kind of that upward projection, and we'll see them coming in around number 3.
Makes sense. Yeah, I had them rebounding this year versus last year, and making that swing again. I had them at 9-3 as well, and so it makes sense that they would.
Yeah. I actually believe they could kind of do a swing if everything rolls in the right direction. I believe they could actually potentially be an 11-1 team.
Fair enough.
But I think with just a kind of a tough schedule to kind of have going on, I feel like it could slip easily, and even fall as far down as a 9-3 as well. Though, I feel like a couple of those games are definitely can go either way.
Yep. And hopefully that Texas-Oklahoma game is going to be a fun one this year.
I really hope.
Are you sure you don't want another blowout? Like I mean, those are always fun.
Oh yeah, welcome to blowouts. That's great.
Yeah.
No blowouts. I like good games.
Yeah.
So Texas Tech, I've got coming at 4.
Okay.
Texas Tech at 4. I didn't say that into the mic. 75% of their returning offense, 52% of their defense. They're very consistent. They're a good team. Think they're going to be coming in at 4.
Fair enough. Dennis, you got thoughts on Texas Tech?
Actually, I do have them kind of as a possible dark horse to actually win the whole entire conference.
Okay.
Like they have the talent.
Yes.
They definitely have the talent. If they can get things kind of rolling in the right situation, get that cohesiveness of this team, I feel like they can easily go 10-2 of just winning the conference. But I feel like an also very possible scenario, something that I feel like by Oklahoma, I feel like they could even drop down to 8-4.
Yeah. I think Texas Tech has one of the most underrated coaching staffs in the Big 12. And so it's one of those things that if they do and capitalize what people know they're capable of, then they could easily be, the actual dark horse that you're talking about.
Right.
But based on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from like some of their scrimmages and some things like that, I'm thinking that it might honestly be like a 7-5 team this year.
Yeah.
So
TCU is who I have coming in at 5.
Okay.
Now they have 33% of their offensive production coming back and 71% of their defensive. They do have 9 transfers, so that's great. In the Big 12, they rank 9th in their returning offensive production. That's at that 33%, and it ranks 130th nationally. But I think that they're a team that's going to their defense is really going to do a good job of bringing them up, and that offense, I think, is going to do enough to help them get to number 5.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think TCU will definitely take a step back from where they were last year. Last year they they just kind of surprised everybody, except for Georgia.
I mean, they just didn't show up for that game, just to be honest.
I think they thought that they were going to win that game, and so they decided just to stay in the locker room.
I blame it on the time change. Central to East Coast time.
Now you said Georgia. You mean Michigan?
No, Georgia.
Oh, Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the wrong team.
Yeah, you were thinking the wrong team, man. Michigan didn't blow TCU out like like Georgia did. But I think TCU still does have enough weapons. As you were talking about the portal stuff, they brought in, I want to say, some wide receivers from Alabama, some 5-stars from Alabama, which is pretty impressive to be able to get those. And so I can really see that being something that could turn into their favor. It just really requires them to hit on all cylinders.
Right.
But even then, even at their best, they're maybe making a January 6th bowl, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and I feel like that's extremely optimistic.
exactly.
Okay. So 6, and this is one that I think might come as a little bit of surprise for everybody. I've got Kansas.
Okay.
They've got 91% of their returning offensive production and 80% of their defense.
Phew.
And they've got 12 transfers. Okay. Their coach, Lance Leopold, it's his second year. They've shown such great improvement, such a lot, just strides, big strides. And then returning most of their starters is going to be very critical for them. Yeah, I think that they're going to surprise everybody. They've got a very cohesive team. They've got a team that's played with each other, that knows how to play with each other. And I think that this year it's going to really show, and they're going to be 6th.
I mean, I feel like I'm going to treat Kansas, honestly, like everybody else. Where is it? I feel like they're going to get lost in the middle of the pack. At best, I feel like they're going to be 8-4. But realistically, I would not be at 6. I would see them at 6-6. Dorothy wanted to leave there, and I'm pretty sure everyone else wants to leave there.
Right.
Yeah, I also had them going 8-4, but because of their returning production, I could easily see them doing something like what Penn State might do, or something like that, where they really come in and disrupt things. But they have to catch people, while they're down, or just not while they're not looking. Because again, it's one of those things that they get really hot early on. They go and start playing their Texas and stuff like that. They're gonna have problems.
Yeah, I think they're going to be more of the team that just kind of like messes up everyone else's plans. I don't think they're going to be the team that can be like, oh snap, like, hey, where did they come from? It's going to be like, no, we know exactly where you came from. Just kind of stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's sometimes just as much fun.
Oh yeah.
I love teams that mess up the plans. Like,
Oh,
don't get me wrong,
true.
I love those.
Oh, yeah. So they will definitely be one that I'll be cheering for this year. 7, I've got Baylor.
Okay.
60% of their offensive and 51% of their defensive, 10 transfers. When you get to the kind of the middle of the pack in the Big 12, I think, like you were saying, it just it all kind of molds together, and it all kind of is this 8-4.
It's a pretty top-heavy conference, I feel like. Or not so much top-heavy, but it's like everyone's like really competitive with one another, so it's just easy to get lost in the mix and be a middle team.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and like I have Baylor as basically kind of like what we were talking about with Kansas.
Yeah.
They're easily a team that can disrupt, and because they get, especially like they get some crazy home field advantage and stuff like that. Like the fact that TCU was able to even clutch that win last year, they were lucky, because Baylor had that one in the bag for a long time.
It was like the last second field goal, right?
Yes, like literally. I mean, it was a scary field goal.
I feel like it depends on the momentum that Baylor's able to kind of build out throughout the season. I mean, they have playing TCU, Kansas State, and Texas. Depending on how each one of those games go, it can mean like, hey, either Baylor's going to ruin some plans or just kind of get lost as well in the mix.
True. Right. Yep.
So 8, I've got Oklahoma State. Again, just kind of in that middle of the pack, 65% of their returning offensive production, 50% of their defensive production, and 13 transfers coming in. Again, when you get to this middle one, they're just kind of there. I think they're the same kind of team that can disrupt some stuff. You go into that Oklahoma game and they can disrupt some things, but we'll just have to see how they play.
Agreed. Yeah, I have them really pretty much best case scenario going 6-6. About 500.
I literally match the same thing.
Yeah, it's they just like you're saying, they can disrupt, but just like anybody in the Big 12, right, really can disrupt each other. Like,
right.
I mean, I won't even be surprised if BYU goes and just disrupts a lot of teams
just
this year.
in the Big 12, there's not a lot of like one school that has like more standout talent than the other, so that's why I feel like it makes them even more competitive.
Yep, true.
So I've got 9. I've got UCF.
Okay.
Again, 62% of their offensive, 69% of their defensive production, 12 transfers. I think they're going to come in and maybe surprise a few people. But again, another one of those teams that we're just going to have to see.
True.
We're going to have to see what they do.
I think UCF plays such a different type of ball than most
the rest of
the rest of the
Right.
conference. I think they're honestly gonna catch a couple teams with their pants down.
Yep.
And in kind of like what Tennessee did last year.
Right.
With some teams, and because it's like if you have Tennessee beating LSU 40-13, but if you had Tennessee and LSU playing late season last year, probably wouldn't. It would have been a lot closer of a game. Yeah. And so it's just one of those things that I feel like UCF easily could go in and could actually pull out a pretty substantial win, like 8-4, even 9-3,
Right.
if they hit their stride just right.
Yep.
I can see that actually. I mean, I didn't have them going 9-3 or even 8-4, but
No,
I mean, a couple things going like kind of breaking their way. I could definitely see that actually.
Yeah, my reality for them was like 6-6, but I was just like
Yeah.
they could easily.
It would
catch the
be
wind.
easy for them to get to an 8-4, just
Yeah,
like you said, catching some
it
people.
wouldn't take much.
No, nope. I've got 10 Iowa State, 76% offensive production, returning 51% of their defense. They're coming off of their first losing season since 2016, but they rank second in the Big 12 in returning starters and third in returning defensive production. The problem is I just don't see that doing much for them.
I'm actually willing to bet on this
Yeah.
and take a gamble, but I feel like they're just going to be like a 2-9 team. Like,
And
Two
by the
and
way,
9, they're even going to miss a game.
like
they're not going to show up. They're all going to be
Like-
suspended for gambling.
no, I mean, as I'm saying, I'm willing to gamble on this. I'm willing
That
to
was
take
actually
their
a
model.
great-
I'm willing
Yep.
to take their model.
That was a great setup there. There you go.
Yeah, and by the way, he's willing to bet, but that doesn't mean that we're telling you to bet on them.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's his money. He can
Yeah.
do whatever he wants to with his money. But
You can at me and let's
Yeah.
go.
yep. So 11, I've got BYU, 62% of their offensive, 65% of their defensive, 13 transfers, but BYU.
Why?
Yeah,
Why
I,
you?
I feel
why you here?
yeah, why you? But yeah, I feel like a lot of these teams are just we kind of get into that. They could catch somebody.
yeah, they're
You'll
most
see.
most of the rest of these teams on in the Big 12, I'm pretty sure, are going to be lucky if they're breaking 500.
Right.
BYU, I think, has one of the better cases for it. Maybe
Mhm.
Cincinnati's a better one, but I've got Houston and West Virginia basically edging like 5 and 7
Yeah.
or worse
Mhm.
in their best case scenario. So I can see where you're coming from with BYU. Like it's that they're kind of the start of the precipice for the drop off for the
Right.
for the Big 12. So
Mhm. I mean, I actually 100% agree with that. I don't really see them making much noise. Like,
Mhm.
I actually really don't.
yeah,
Like
Yeah.
a couple close games at best, but I feel like any team that to watch in the Big 12, they're just not going to show up for those games.
12, I've got Houston. Houston does have 77% of their returning offensive production and 43% of their defense and 14 transfers. Again, Houston.
it's Houston.
It's
Yeah.
Houston.
Yeah.
The precipice, the decline
Yeah,
has started, and it's kind of going down quick. And then 13, I've got Cincinnati.
yeah.
They have 15 transfers, which is the highest amount in the Big 12. But you got Scott Satterfield, who's coming in as a new coach, who's coming in as Cincinnati being in the Big 12 for the first time.
Mhm.
And you're replacing a guy like Luke Fickell, who did some great things with Cincinnati.
Mhm.
You just don't have. You shouldn't have. If you're a Cincinnati fan, please do not have too high of expectations for his first year.
Yeah.
I have him coming in 13, and that's pretty much edging out West Virginia for that bottom spot. I mean, it's
Hey, it's competition for the bottom spot too.
yeah.
No, I mean, like one thing I actually heard about when it comes to actually Cincinnati is their quarterback, Emory Jones, being a dual threat. So I wonder if the fact that it's kind of a new system, new thing, if they're just going to kind of let him loose, we'll figure it out
True.
as the season kind of goes in.
Yeah, hope he doesn't get hurt.
I hope he doesn't, but I see them at best like a 4-8 team.
Fair enough. And so obviously we know where you got West Virginia.
West
sitting,
Virginia
so-
last. They're 60% of their returning offense, 68% of their returning defensive production, 10 transfers.
And you have returning production that didn't produce last year. so-
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you have that returning production, it's great. You were 60% of the 4 points that you scored, whatever it was, maybe, but
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think the West Virginia's going to get out of the mines. So it's fine.
I mean, honestly, the thing that's sad is that West Virginia has honestly a pretty good footprint,
Mhm.
and so
Yeah.
they really could recruit well.
do.
But most of the Virginia teams have just been really hurting for the past couple of years, and so and some of them have legitimately good reasons for that, and then but others it just feels like they just made bad coaching hires. And as a Tennessee fan, I understand that. So
better than some.
better than
Better than
most
most.
people, far and away.
Right.
But it's just one of those things. Like West Virginia, I feel like would be the Virginia type team that will
Mhm.
probably rebound faster than the other teams in the ACC and stuff like that are in that same kind of cluster.
Yeah.
Just because the Big 12 is a more competitive conference than the ACC.
Oh,
So-
100%, yeah.
So-
I agree with that.
So before we head into our our projections for the Pac-12, we wanted just to do an ode. Just you've heard of like 15 seconds of silence or a moment of silence or whatnot. We wanted to do 8 seconds for every 1 second for every team that's leaving the Pac-12. We wanted to do 8 seconds of sadness. So just bear with us for a second. Alrighty then. So moving on to our Pac-12
Done being said.
So while it's still the Pac-12 and turns to the Pac-4 next year. You okay there, Dennis? I know
so
you're
disappointed.
grieving. He's so disappointed. He's the one grieving the
Oh,
most.
man.
He's from the West Coast.
I've grown up watching when it was like the Pac-10 and everything that's a Pac-12. To see it basically kind of becoming a Pac-4 and at best,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a it's hard.
Now, can you still be a Power 5 conference if you've only got 4?
I mean, they're gonna be the 4 power, man.
Now,
Who else are they gonna play?
see, here's the thing. Now, you can make an argument. You could have a power conference if you only had 4 teams. If your 4 teams are like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Michigan,
Right.
sure. But when it's Stanford or Cal, it leaves much to be desired.
Now,
But
when we're talking about Power 5 of football, not
Yeah.
academics.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, maybe we could just kick Vanderbilt over to them.
There you
and
go.
They would be. It's like a new Ivy
Where are
League.
the-
So
The unofficial Ivy League.
the unofficial Ivy League. So what you guys have for the Pac-12?
So I think that it's, for me at least, pretty undisputed. USC's won.
'Kay.
Got 75% of their offense,
Mhm.
78% of their defense production. They've got 12 transfers. I mean, you've got a quarterback who is going into another Heisman season
True.
where he's just projected to do so many things, projected to be the #1 pick next year already. You don't have – there's just not going to be much standing in their way.
True.
You got a couple other teams in the Pac-12, but other than that, I think that they just kind of dominate, run the board, and end up on the top.
Actually, I would agree with that too. I have actually USC kind of winning the entire conference, and if they actually end up with only a 1-loss team, I actually do see them jumping into the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, honestly, like it for me, it's a toss-up between USC and Oregon. I think, and the reason being is that, like Oregon, while USC has all the returning production and has an incredible staff and stuff like that, coaching staff and whatnot, and they made some good improvements through the portal for their defensive line and stuff.
Oh yeah, they got the guy
Anderson.
from Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like with those things, it does bode well in their favor. I think the biggest thing that I want to see, and this has nothing to do with Oregon, it actually has to do with just USC. I want to see how they're going to play against Utah, because that seems to be their Achilles heel. And so, and Utah's returning a lot of production too. They're and it's really going to at that point going to be up to Cam Rising if he's going to be healthy, and if he is, USC could be in trouble. So
yeah. So I've got 2 being Washington.
okay,
74% of their offensive, 73% of their defensive with 7 transfers. I just think this is one of those teams that you are going to see be very constant throughout the year, and then have some of those USC, Utah, Oregon, kind of those teams maybe get a loss here, get a loss there. And Washington, I think, I'm with you that I think Oregon is better. I think Washington kind of sneaks into a #2 spot.
I can see that.
Actually, I have Washington as actually my second team.
Really?
Yeah. I actually think they're actually going to be a better team than Oregon. Actually, I have Oregon as my #3 team.
Fair enough.
Washington, I think it's all going to depend on their quarterback play with Michael Penix.
Yep.
And I actually have him even as a Heisman contender even as well.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, like the really the top 4 in the Pac-12. You've got in my thing. You're talking USC, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. And so like those 4, they could really trade places with each other pretty
See, I think
easily.
the difference though with the Pac-12 though compared to the Big 12 is the fact that their Pac-12 is more top heavy.
Agreed.
That's why the first 8 teams are the one leaving.
Right.
Even the worst one is going to end up leaving too. So they're doing something.
True. That's very true.
So I've got 3. I've got 3 going to Utah.
Okay.
83% of their offensive production, 69% of their defensive. We've mentioned Cam Rising. He's coming back from that ACL tear. He got it in a bowl game, I believe, last year. They lost their left tackle. They lost their center. They lost their tight end.
Yep.
But they are returning the highest percentage of their offensive production.
Yep.
So as long as that line can really do what they need to do for Cam or Cameron Rising, I don't know what he goes by. Call in Cam. Let me know if I'm right.
Send us a letter.
As long as they get that protection for him, I see them being 3.
Yeah, I could see that.
I can see them being 3, but I actually have them kind of lower on my end. Honestly, I can't even see them drop as that 8-4 team. It's not that I don't have
I
the
thought you said
Just
the 8, and I was like,
no,
dropping to 8.
No, not that far.
He's got Colorado at 3.
I must have been hanging out in Colorado if I was saying that.
Stanford gets really mad this year, and they end up at 3.
You got to green them out of Palo and Alto and everything like that when it comes to that. But no, I actually have Utah possibly at worst kind of a more realistic situation being an 8-4 team. And I feel like because the way their schedule kind of lines up, they have kind of a really tough kind of line with like 3 teams back to back.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things where I kind of burying USC with Caleb and everything like that is just the fact that I feel like that's one of the reasons he's coming back.
Yeah.
The one, you got disgraced by Utah. It wasn't just like, hey, we beat you guys 2 times in a row. It's like, no, we whooped your guys' butts. Like, you guys had no chance of winning here.
Yep.
So that's where I have Utah a little bit lower on my list, but still very much a contender.
Fair enough.
4, I've got Oregon, as we've talked. Like I said, those first 4 teams, I think we could interchange them almost wherever we want to. Again, I think USC is the number 1. I think that's
I can
just
agree
kind
with
of
that. Yeah.
consensus. The next 3, I think you could kind of put them wherever, and you'd be all right. They've got 65% of their offensive and 65% of their defensive production coming back. Big concern at the offensive line. They've only got 1 full-time starter returning, and 2 of their line are transfers. So that right there, I think, is what's going to make or break Oregon. And if we've seen anything over time, I think the play of your offensive line kind of dictates where you're going to be.
True.
Which is why I have them kind of falling to the bottom of that top 4.
That's fair.
I think their offensive line, it's going to take a little bit for them to kind of mesh and might lose a game because of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I can agree with that. I have them best case scenario going 11-1, but I think in reality they're probably going to end up losing like 2 games. I don't see them necessarily clinching the Pac-12 unless literally USC just stumbles to Utah and Utah unless there's like a cannibalization thing that happens where they're just cannibalizing themselves.
I have Oregon kind of at batting least at the top as well. I think if it comes down to really Bo Nix and the running back Bucky Irving, if they're able to get in the flow, even with the new offensive line, them two, I feel like can easily kind of run through the Pac-12. Not the easiest road, but definitely be able to be on any conference. Hey, you got to watch out for these players.
Yeah, those are 2 guys who could do it if anybody's going to do it.
For sure.
5, I've got Oregon State. 78% of their offensive production, 52% of their defensive. Again, I think we start kind of like we did with the Big 12. You start getting to that middle. You start just kind of like here. You've got the top 4 that I think you kind of can interchange. I think that for me at least, the next 4 you can kind of interchange, and then the last 4 you can kind of interchange.
True.
But I've got Oregon State as 5 there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have them taking too much of a drop off from last year. I think their best case scenario is going 9-3 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think in reality they're probably just going to go 8-4.
No, I have them at 9-3, like kind of best case scenario as well.
Sure.
So.
I've got UCLA coming in at 6. 54% of their offensive and 75% of their defensive production coming back. And they've got 14 transfers coming in. So
nice.
Kind of see what happens with them, but I've got them going 6.
Awesome.
So I have them, doing a little better. I think it's the fact that Chip Kelly's probably finally getting the players that he wants, and he's actually been improving the past couple of years. Where last year he was probably on the hot seat of being like, "Hey, if you don't produce, we're gonna cut you."
Right.
And the fact that he was able to kind of bring his team to be able to actually perform, and I'm not saying they're going to be able to compete for the number 1 spot in the Pac-12 at all, but I definitely think it's a team that could come into probably just three losses throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, I can see UCLA being like kind of like what we were talking about with Baylor or whatnot.
Yeah.
They could easily disrupt some teams, cause some teams to lose kind of their. I mean, even the USC UCLA matchup, that's always a dogfight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if it looks like UCLA is completely outgunned, it's very possible they might pull out a win because sometimes USC just chokes.
It's one of those rivalries that just Ohio State, Michigan, Auburn, Alabama, they just seem to
you can have one good team, and the other one just at the bottom of the place. It's like, hey, you guys are rivals for a reason. Let's not overlook this.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see here. 7, I've got Washington State. 73% of their offensive, 50% of their defensive coming back, the production. So I just, again, think they're one of those teams that's going to come in a little bit of disruption. But do they have the talent to really get to the top? Probably not.
Yeah, I can agree with that too.
Yeah, I'm actually at the same time. I feel like they would be a 500 team, kind of more likely scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Arizona at 8, 72% of their offensive production coming back, 42% of their defensive. But kind of like we've said, when you get down to the bottom parts of these rankings, what does the production really matter?
Yeah.
You're returning 72% of not great production. So
True.
Arizona 8. Any
No
thoughts on that?
I mean, I think they're also going to be a similar disruptor, like in the sense that they're one of those teams that if you underestimate, they come out and play hard. They can play hard. They can beat you up. But I don't think they've got the depth to do what you want to see them do to be that disruptive. So I think you're gonna see them maybe catch one team off guard, and that's it.
Yeah, it's gonna be the team where like, hey, we played like Utah and like this week, and then like 2 weeks from now we're playing like Oregon or something like. It's like okay, wait, we caught you off guard.
Right.
But other than that, I'm like, no, don't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see here. I got Cal coming in 9, 58% of their offensive, 78% of their defensive, 10 transfers. Again, like we keep saying, we'll see who they catch off guard. We'll see what happens. No big comments there. We'll just kind of move on.
Yeah. I mean, with Cal, I'm disappointed. You know, I have some family that went to school there, and I grew up watching them at Jet Tedford kind of days. You know, the running backs always get to go. One of my favorite highlights was like Marshawn Lynch just driving that go-kart everywhere on the field, and to see them kind of fall for this. It's still, even though it's obviously been years since that, it's, to me, I'm just like,
still hurts a little bit. I can see it in your eyes.
I grew up watching them, you know, like my oldest brother went to that school, so it was always like, I'm like, hey, like my oldest brother went there, like I can always kind of connect to that, and to see them kind of be where they're at, and it's just really disappointing, and that's kind of where I see where like, hey, their head coach, if I feel like if they don't make it 500, he's gone. He's gone for that, you know.
Yeah.
I could talk about that differently.
Yeah. I think you've got him on your hot seat, don't you?
Oh yeah, like that's burning. It's like Arizona burning. It's hot.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Stay tuned.
So I've got Arizona State coming in at 10, 61 offensive, 45 defensive. They got lots of transfers, 26 transfers.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Exactly.
Colorado I have coming in at 11, 57% of their offense, 57% of the defense.
Hot take. That's a spicy take.
Well,
man.
but here is the 28 transfers. They have lots of transfers.
Yeah.
So lots of people wanting to play for – who's their new coach?
Yeah. Who is it?
Coach On Time? No. Coach
Amazon Prime?
Something like the Optimus Prime.
Optimus Prime.
Yeah,
that's right.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he just tells them to roll out.
And that's right. And then coming in at the bottom, Stanford, 34% of their offense, 36% of their defense, 3-9 last year, lowest amount of offensive and defensive returning production, fewest number of returning starters.
But they have one hell of an education.
But you're going to be smart.
So I know
Andrew Luck.
So I know you've moved up Colorado from bottom to at least number 11. But do you at least think they're going to win more than one game this year? Or do you think your hot take...
Stanford?
No, Colorado.
Colorado, okay.
They only won one game last year. So do you think they're going to win more than one game this year? Because if they do, if he wins 2 games, that's 100% improvement.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to say yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm going to say Optimus Prime gets them at least 2 wins.
I mean, I personally think he's going to get at least 3, but
I do too.
I don't think he's going to do anything better than 3.
I can honestly see 4, and the only reason why...
Do they play the other 4 teams at the bottom of the...
Oh, yes, they do.
Yeah.
That's why.
The only reason I say 4 is because of the fact that, like, the amount of talent he actually is bringing in, it's a lot of raw talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we see in college football, you don't even need a full season to actually be able to get that full talent out of the way.
True.
And I think one thing that Coach Prime could do is definitely be able to kind of get that out.
Oh.
And that's why I see with the hype and the amount of talent, because the hype has a strong what to do. We all know about momentum, and I feel like maybe 4 wins would be honestly the dream scenario.
Well, and what he did previously coaching, like he came in and really took his team to a level that they hadn't been at in a very quick amount of time.
Yeah, Jacksonville State. Yeah,
right. So I think that I think that he has that potential, and if he can get that hype and he can get that momentum and he can turn it into something that maybe in a few years you see them at the top of the 4. But
well, no, they're going to, I believe, the Big 12, right?
Big 12.
Yeah, they're going to the Big 12.
So,
yep.
So he could be the Big 6. You know, he could be the top of that half.
Maybe. So we'll see. But yeah, I think at least 2. I think he's a good enough coach and has the talent, as Dennis saying, to get him at least 2 wins.
I feel like describing though Jacksonville State is not the best description because you're bringing blue chip players to a Division II school,
right?
So you bring any blue chip player to a Division II school,
true,
and especially as many as he brought,
yeah.
You're gonna be able to dominate Division II. You don't got like this is me not taking anything away from him. You don't got to be the best coach.
Right.
It's true.
Like you just got to be play ball. Just go ahead. Do your thing.
Right. Well, I'm not trying to take away from him. You don't have to be the best coach.
Yeah. You don't. No.
I'm just saying. Like.
No, I agree with you. I agree.
Well, and so like that kind of leads us into our next segment, which is like we're talking about we asked each other kind of like who are coaches that we're looking at, and you know from a standpoint of what we think are going to be, and it's not just head coaches, but like OCs or DCs, things like that, and Dennis, you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about Coach Prime, so we just did. But is there anything else you want to add to that? Because I also know you had somebody else in mind too that you want to talk about.
I mean, just kind of finish up with Coach Prime. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking any kind of credit what kind of coach he is or anything like that. I believe he is a good coach. One thing that happened actually a couple weeks ago where one of his players or a couple of his players actually started fighting. And I love the fact that he brought like, hey, if one of you guys fight, you all fight. So he's already bringing that cohesiveness. He's already bringing like, hey, kind of the all for one type energy. And as a person who used to coach actually before too, it's one thing I always admire and always kind of bring in. Like, I don't care if you are an offensive side of the ball and the other player is defense. If the defensive player is fighting, you better, as offense, you better be offensively getting your butts to the other dude. So I appreciate what he's kind of bringing to that energy with the hype. I'm not extremely optimistic on what he's going to be able to do this upcoming season. I know he's been quoted saying, hey, even if he has a 5-7 season, he's going to be extremely disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, if you have 4 wins and more, you're coming to a D1 school. Yes, you have a lot of recruits, but you're also working at the bottom of the barrel.
Right.
Yep.
So, like, give yourself a little wiggle room. The people I've seen kind of rank him even at Colorado's high as a top 25 team. I'm like, y'all probably spent way too much in Colorado. Like, you guys are doing something there that, is kind of messing up with your numbers.
Yeah, true.
The elevation or something,
True.
But, the other one, actually, like we said earlier, was with Cal's head coach over there, Wilcox. Like I said, I'm just extremely disappointed, and I'm actually hoping that he kind of does something. I know they fired their ops coordinator last year during the season, and hoping that the new I forgot his name about who they replaced him with, but I'm hoping it kind of comes out something because it sucks. He's been coaching at Cal, I believe, since 2017, and I think hasn't had a winning season since 2019.
Cool.
So I'll give you a break. You had 2020 COVID. Everybody's kind of skipped a year. Everybody's a year younger than they actually are. I'll give you that kind of grace period.
Yep.
But I think he's going to be on the hot seat. I really believe that if you see him already kind of a 6, because they actually had a pretty good record going into last year, kind of halfway through the season, and they went on a 6-game losing streak, which honestly, it hit me even harder because I'm also a Tennessee Titans fan. So to see a losing streak on 2 teams I mainly watch, I'm like, I got no saving grace in pros. I got no saving grace in college football.
Right.
I'm just going to go ahead, take a nap, and wait till the offseason kicks in because I feel like that's the only way I'm going to win. But I just see him kind of departing, and hopefully with the Pac-12 kind of disbanding, Cal doesn't actually lose or dismiss their program at all because I've even seen some rumors of that. And because they have some debt and they do have an old stadium too. So
yeah,
I hope it doesn't happen. I hope they actually do surprise me. I hope I'm completely wrong about them, but I feel like that's going to carry the hot seat because if the entire conference is moving out, then he needs to do something, or the school needs to do something to make sure they get back on the winning side of things.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, for my coach hires that I was really interested in just kind of keeping an eye on for this next year, I've just picked 2 offensive coordinators. Garrett Riley, who everyone knows, like he's at TCU and just moved over to Clemson, and Clemson is adopting kind of the same like air raid kind of offense, quick like no huddle, quick snap type of offense that Tennessee has, that Baylor made famous and Miami made famous even before then. And so I think if they're able to do that, that's such a different type of ball than what Clemson's used to playing and what the ACC is used to seeing to some degree. Like, it's been a long time since Miami played like that. So I think it would be really interesting to see, like, if he's able to succeed. Cade Klubnik has said that he's been really interested. Like, he really likes the way that the offense plays and it meshes well. He's like, it feels fun to play. But it just really depends on whether or not he's going to be able, whether or not they have the system that's mature enough to really implement all these different players that are not used to that style and get them actually into that and playing like that. And then you've got like Phil Longo, who, he's going over to a place that is used to like bully ball, and he is a pass happy offensive coordinator, which is perfectly fine. I love passing offenses, obviously. But he is, he just like he's going to be like really just completely turning the way that Wisconsin plays on its head, because that's not how they've ever played football.
No, they've always been a running team. Their offensive line,
like.
Offensive line and running backs have always been their thing.
Yep.
And I mean, Luke Fickles, I've heard him say, like, we're not going to not be a running team. And I'm going, how are you not going to be a running team when you're bringing Phil Longo on board?
I'm really wondering how they're going to do it when it comes to, like, basically the cold.
Yeah.
Like, that's where Wisconsin was literally kind of, like, scary to kind of watch because their average offensive lineman was, what, like 6'4", 6'5", 300 pounds.
We need to watch Deflategate, Wisconsin.
They're a scary team, man. Like, but it'll be interesting kind of just switching the entire kind of system to just an kind of air raid type offense.
Oh yeah, that'll be really interesting. And I mean, for what I'm looking at from a standpoint of hot seat, and the reason why we're saving you to last is you got some good coach picks and stuff like that.
You love it or you hate it.
I love it or hate it. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my hot seat out of the way. But I've got Billy Napier in my hot seat. And it's not because I think that he's a bad coach. I think he's not. I think he's actually a phenomenal recruiter. The fact that he's been able to keep Florida relevant even after the recruiting scandal they had earlier this year or late last year, and they're still trending up with a lot of different recruits. I mean, I think they're still in the top 5 last I checked, and which is incredibly impressive, especially for a team that probably won't end ranked this year unless they just come in and blow some people away. But it's one of those things that Florida they're not quite a blue blood program. They're too young. But they have enough confidence in their program to where they have a very short fuse for failure. And so if he goes 500 or sub 500, that's another losing season. That's and that's 3 losing seasons in a row for Florida. And what I hope honestly doesn't happen.
Tebow for head coach.
What I hope happens is that if he does go sub 500, he's able to stay. And the reason for that is because even though I have some disdain for Florida because they're a new arch rival for Tennessee, a newish arch rival for Tennessee, but I don't want them to have to deal with what Tennessee dealt with for the past 15 years. Because I want the best rivalries and stuff like that are when those teams are both at their peak.
Yeah, right.
That's like the best Tennessee Florida games were in the 90s when you got Philip Fulmer going against Spurrier.
Those are
phenomenal games.
Good games.
Anyways, so you've got some interesting picks there, Luke.
I do, and like going back to Florida, like they really they need stability. That's what Florida really could use right now. So I really hope that even though he's on the hot seat, and I agree with you, I hope they don't get rid of him. So big coaching hires. Part of me wanted to go to Wisconsin because Luke Fickell has some Ohio State ties. I think that was a great hire for Wisconsin. I kind of wanted to do Matt Rule again, staying in the Big Ten. Kind of I think that's going to be a great coach for Nebraska. I thought about Deion Sanders, but the one that really just it's big and it kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit was Auburn hiring Hugh Freeze.
Oh yeah.
Now, I think for me, when you look at what was their other guy's name, Brian Harsin, they hired him from Boise State. I think that was a very interesting call. I think from a football standpoint, that probably wasn't a great hire to take somebody from Boise State to come to the SEC. I mean, he was a good coach, but
sure.
You could argue that it was a bad call. But then all the stuff with Brian Harsin came out where people were talking about him having an affair, and Auburn fans started saying, well, we can't have somebody who had an affair coaching our football team.
No.
That's just not good. So they do investigations. They pay him his $15 million buyout, and they get rid of him.
Poor
And
him.
let's-
Yeah,
I
how
know.
he's gonna survive?
But here's the deal. You don't pay him $15 million
No.
if he was actually doing something that was fireable.
Yeah.
So they have this moral outrage about this guy
Yeah.
having an affair. And then they go on this coaching search and they go, let's get Hugh Freeze, the Jesus of college football. How sweet of a man he is. That
I mean, he was at Liberty, so. He knows
well,
about
and even
Jesus.
before then in Memphis,
Oh yeah.
when he was in Memphis, he had girls who were saying that they made him feel uncomfortable and things like that. At Liberty, there's him DMing or messaging girls that were part of that like sexual allegation scandal and them feeling intimidated by him. And then let's not even talk about, we don't even have to talk about Ole Miss where he's fired for escorts. I mean, like, so like, I think for me, I really hope that Hugh Freeze does some great things at Auburn.
Yeah.
So that their morality, they don't have to worry about their morality because they can just talk about winning.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think that's where I went with my head coaching is just this Auburn fans, if you want to take it from we got a better football coach, 100%.
Yeah.
I think you got a better football coach. I think he's going to be better for your team. But the moral outrage that all these Auburn fans had against Harsin,
Yeah.
that now they're not having for Hugh Freeze, who was proved to have done worse things. Oh man.
Well, and
Gets me going.
I think I mentioned to you, I think one of the reasons they went with Hugh Freeze, and this is just I think an Auburn thing, is they just wanted somebody that knows how to beat Saban.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of the only coaches that has been consistent at being able to beat Saban. So they're just like, well, he knows the game plan, so let's
He
do that.
knows the game plan, so let's hire him, even though.
Yeah, I'm still not. I get the reason, like, hey, a person who's beat Saban and everything that. I actually was very disappointed when they actually announced that hiring. I actually really liked how to like Williams as an interim head coach. Yeah, they went 2-2, but I feel like if you have an amount of college players, and this is why I think what Coach Prime is excelling so well is, as a college player, if you see another former college player who had success in college, who won, I believe they won a national championship when it was him. I'm forgetting his name right now. Jason Campbell. And even Ronnie Brown back in the mid-2000s, he knows how to win. He knows how to play in the NFL. So having that coach's kind of player relation was working great for him. And I feel like to be able to kind of surround yourself around that with everything kind of going on, that was a huge miss, I feel like.
Yeah, agreed. So the other coach that I was going to talk about was not a head coach, but I was going to talk about offensive coordinators. I had Phil Longo on there. Great call, switching from ground and pound to kind of the air raid, and we'll see how that goes. I thought about Kevin Sumlin to Maryland. That's an interesting thing. But my big thing for that was Brian Hartline at Ohio State. Had to bring in my Buckeyes. I try to do it every time.
How did you find him? I
mean, how would I know? But when you've got a guy who has been doing in the receiver room what he's been doing at Ohio State, and then moving him up to offensive coordinator. Now, we'll see how that translates. We'll see how it goes from what he's been doing with the receivers, having the best receiver group undeniably in the NCAA.
Far and away.
Far and away.
For preseason.
But for preseason. But how does he translate that to an offensive coordinator? It could be a make or break. He could be great. He could not be. But at the end of the day, Ryan Day knows he's given this guy a shot. He's done well with what he's done. If he doesn't, Ryan Day has said he's going to let him call some plays. If he doesn't do so well, Ryan Day just goes right back into calling plays again. It's kind of an easy transfer.
True. Yeah.
But then my hot seats, I've got two. I'll do the quick one first. I actually have Brent Venables at Oklahoma.
Okay.
In a bit of a hot seat. Now I hope that they don't treat him as bad as I think that they might. Oklahoma is another one of those fan bases that, if you don't win, if you don't do what we want right now, you're gone.
Yeah.
The river is red for a reason.
If he has another losing season, if he doesn't meet expectations, I think there's a really good chance that they just.
What do you think the actual realistic expectations are for him in Oklahoma? Like, do you think?
I think that they expect him to at least be 10-2, if not 11-1.
Is that really fair? 10-2.
Is it? But no, it's college football. It's not fair.
I think they expect him at minimum to be able to compete for the SEC championship.
Yes.
starting next
Starting
year.
next season.
So I think that they see that this year is a year where he needs to show a significant improvement
Yeah.
Mhm.
in a way that makes it to where next year they could easily vie for one of the spots in the SEC
They
championship.
feel comfortable
Exactly.
knowing that
interesting to
he's
see.
going. So,
It'll be interesting to see.
but then here's the big one, and this is what
Yeah.
we have had some extensive conversations about. Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, and it wasn't necessarily that I said Jimbo Fisher; it's that my replacements for Jimbo Fisher potentially were possibly Luke Fickell, which if he does some great things at Wisconsin, I could see Texas A&M throwing some money that Wisconsin can't or won't pay, or Josh Heupel.
Yeah, and that's not happening.
And here's my thing, and I think the disconnect between us here is that I think that the Texas A&M would want Josh Heupel, that they would make an offer to Josh Heupel. I would hope that he wouldn't accept it, and I don't think that he would accept it, but I think that they would try and get him. And I think that Texas A&M, you might call it delusion, whatever you may say, thinks that they're a team that could pull a coach away from a team like UT. So
I mean, I agree with you. I think that they're delusional enough to believe. I mean, like I'll put it this way. I think when like Saban goes to eventually retire, I think that Bama thinks that they'll be able to pull whoever they want to, when really what the draw for Bama was Saban.
right.
And so Bama might actually hit a recession and they don't realize it's coming. But like you got Texas A&M is again, they're a blue blood program. I'm not saying they're not, but they're about on par with Tennessee from a standpoint of like where they sit in their win losses, their history as a program, program. But the reason why I disagree is I think that they would at least assess the situation and go, yeah, while we might like to get Heupel, we know that it'll be a wasted offer, because the thing is the moment that they offer him, they're removing an offer from someone that actually might be a viable candidate. They know he's not going to be a viable candidate. Now, is there someone on their staff that's probably delusional enough to believe that he is a viable candidate? Sure. But
I mean, you throw poop against the wall and you see what sticks.
Well,
so.
but the reason why this is like
family friendly.
Yeah, the reason why it's actually kind of an interesting like topic is because what happened just in the past 24 hours with Danny White, the athletic director for Tennessee.
Yeah,
he got into a little bit of a Twitter war, not really a war, but just a little spat.
Twitter, you mean X?
I mean X. Sorry, guys. Whoa, sorry,
verbal
Elon.
battle.
Sorry, Elon. He got into a little thing with the head coach of Virginia, because the head coach of Virginia said that he was offered the Tennessee job, and Danny White, who was the athletic director, said he never offered him that. And he goes, there's a difference between interviewing someone and offering someone, which is true.
Oh,
and,
yeah. I have plenty of
so-
interviews, very few offers.
Yeah, and that was the entire thing. Is he's like we never offered him, so I don't know where he's getting this idea. He was offered and he decided not to come. Like, he was never offered a job here. So yeah, so it was a nice little spiciness on the Tennessee side, and it was one of those yeah, it's a spicy take. But it was just one of those things. Like, I could see Texas A&M kind of getting into a lot of kerfuffles like that if they're not careful, especially if Jimbo Fisher doesn't perform like he should this year.
And I think my hot take for the year, if that wasn't hot enough, I'm going to say that Kirk Ferentz from Iowa will be retiring at the end of this year.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think
That's
that
interesting.
he's getting up there in age, and then all the stuff with the gambling stuff.
Yeah.
I think that this might be the year that he just kind of goes.
This is a good time to.
And this is a good time for me to head out.
Yeah.
So especially if they don't end up
Yeah.
performing like he thinks they should.
No, and
so,
I get you. So before we sign off tonight, we're about to hit week 0 for games. So I want to make sure we at least cover just quickly, like kind of rapid fire, 3 games that I think are going to be just fun to watch. Are they must watch? None of them are. But they're going to be fun to watch because they're week 0 and there's so
Football is back.
Football is back and I'm ready for it. And so the game that I have for this upcoming weekend that I will be watching just because I think it'll be interesting to see what happens is Vanderbilt and Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know this until I was just doing some research before I got onto the program tonight. Do you know Vanderbilt actually has a streak against Hawaii? It's actually, they have a winning streak against Hawaii.
Oh, a winning streak, not
winning
a streak in their underwear.
No, no. They have a
Like
winning streak against Hawaii.
collectively.
Like,
Not like they had a winning streak back sometime
no,
when.
no.
and then-
Vanderbilt they're currently winning on a winning streak against Hawaii.
More than one?
It's one. It's one.
I was really thinking about that. Like, I'm about to look this up.
All
Hold on,
right.
give me 1 second.
Anyways, but we'll move on to the next games. You guys want to tackle the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, you go
Well,
ahead.
I'll go ahead. You got the
Yeah.
game that actually might be. So USC versus San Jose State. USC is 30-point favorites.
It's gonna be a close one.
I expect them to meet that, if not beat that. Having their quarterback start off with 5 or 6 touchdowns is going to be very good for his Heisman race.
You can't argue with some numbers sometimes, But I would say like the game I feel like it's gonna watch is Navy Notre Dame. Honestly, I'm actually hoping that Navy kind of wins. Not really a Notre Dame fan.
Yeah.
And if they win, honestly, I'll be happy. I feel like Notre Dame is overrated. I don't think they're that good.
Yeah.
Like when it just comes down to it.
I personally I love the fact they're playing in Ireland. I think that's just super cool.
I mean, that's true. Yes.
So that's just going to be a fun game.
So it's
to
a
watch.
home game for Notre Dame, right?
I guess.
Even though Navy, they go everywhere, right?
True. Maybe it's a home
All
game
the
for both of
seas.
them.
Who knows?
I don't know. All right. Well, again, thanks again for joining us tonight for our tailgate, and we'll be back next Thursday, ready to kick off week 1, which is going to be so much fun. So if you can, it'd be great to just subscribe. Just click that button below and come back to our tailgate next week and see what's going on for this next season. Thanks.